Okay, so now let's discuss the whole leg posing, from the tip of the toes to the hips. We want to try to avoid legs just standing straight side by side. So we're going to be going for different angles, like the triangle shape, or one leg straight and then the other one out, or kind of like an X where you bring the knees together. We'll show you lots of examples of those. If you want to take pictures of somebody walking toward the camera, you don't want to do this. You don't want to catch them with the legs apart, just like two straight sticks. So what I like to do is I take a picture every time they plant their near foot on the ground. And if you're not sure you got the pose that you wanted, it's always a safe idea to just pose it. If the person is walking straight at the camera, then it doesn't really matter which foot is forward. But I do like to have them put one foot in front of the other so we have a narrow point on the bottom for more of a feminine look. Same story here, just baggier pants. One more example of the girl coming straight at the camera. So again, it doesn't really matter which foot is forward. I used a wide-angle lens here for a deliberate distortion, or actually perspective distortion, but the leg posing is a little uncomfortable to look at. So I had her cross her feet, and that works much better because it's more discreet. One pose that I like to do for guys is to have them stand with their feet relatively far apart. That conveys a sense of strength in the triangular shape of the pose. For this one we had him lean on one leg but then bring the other one out, and that's good. Standing on one leg and then throwing the other knee out is a good way to make this work. We wouldn't want the knees together because that's more of a delicate pose. So we want something a little stronger. But we certainly don't want to have her throw her hip too far out because that's not the look or the story that we're trying to tell with this. Because knees together versus knees apart is an important concept and one that I do very often, I'll show several examples of it. And knees apart. And again, cropping it so that it works out like this works well. Now this girl wasn't quite as thin as the other girl, so as you can see, putting the weight on the near leg isn't quite as flattering as probably she would like. And we just had her shift her weight to the back leg this time and just take the weight off the front knee and bend it. And I think this works better. We try to crop it right about with the knees, and we want the knees to be about together. So that gives us the smallest point down in the bottom. Another girl who's, again, not supermodel thin, so going with this pose tends to add a little bulk and weight to the front thigh. For sports, we can allow that, but I'd still rather flatter them a bit more. So shifting the weight to her back foot allowed the front knee to bend and bring those together, and I think this is more flattering for her. I mentioned that I like to have the knees together to give it a more delicate look. And we can equate that to like a ballet dancer who's up on point. They look delicate, they look light because of the tiny point that they're balanced on. So the same thing applies to legs. Same thing with high heels. That's why women, when they're standing on their toes or high heels, look thinner because there's a smaller base that supports them. So if we have a girl cross their legs so that they bend and connect at the knees, that's a very desirable pose to do. We don't want to crop the image at a joint. If we crop a little above, that's okay. And that's what I did on these images. I was just a little higher than where the knees crossed. But the girls were crossing their legs more extreme, so I would definitely want to crop it right at the point where it's at its narrowest. or we can crop just below a joint. And how much lower depends on how much we want to show of the person and of the outfit. Now this is a thin girl, but with the outfit and the pose, it's not the most flattering. I do like the photograph, but I think there's a better way to pose her, and that's coming up next. As you can see, bringing those knees together created a more slimming type of pose. Having them place their weight on the back foot and then take the weight off the front and bend that knee is a good idea. But here she was turned away from the camera a little bit too much for that to happen, and I had her bring her knee too far forward. So we'll have her face the camera just a little bit more and then bend the knees, and make sure that when the knees are bent, they come together at the very bottom of the photograph. And guess what? It works from the back too. Keep those knees together. Where you crop the photograph has a lot to do with how far to bend the knees. So here, because of the way it's cropped, she's still a bit wide at the bottom. Crossing her legs a little bit more helped because of where I cropped the image. As I said way back in the beginning, the pose is dictated by the story you want to tell. And because this is a horse, it's kind of a Western theme, it's not necessary to be delicate in her knee posing. So this works. But for her, because she was just a little wider, a little thicker, I thought that we should do this kind of knee posing for her, and this worked out very well. When their back is up against the wall, I think it's best to bend the near knee, putting that near foot up against the wall. This may seem overly picky, but when posing so the knees are together, I don't want to see the back of the back knee either. So since I goofed when I posed her, I had to remove that in Photoshop. Now here we have the front leg straight and the back leg dragging behind, and that can work, but it really isn't for her. Her hips are looking a little wide here, so let's try to fix that. I went back to that standard pose of putting the weight on the back foot and then bending the front knee, and that helped her hips a lot. Thinner girls can handle that kind of weight on the front leg. By the way, this isn't about judging someone by their body size. This is about photographing them in a way that they'll enjoy. Here we go with the dragging a foot behind type of pose. We'll go through a few different poses for her. Because she's thin, we can do quite a variety of poses for her. Here I just had her swing her hips out to the side. Going back to that stronger pose where she's got her weight on the front foot and bending the back knee, throwing the hip out backwards. And crossing her feet. So as you can see, for this type of person, we can try all kinds of things, and thankfully it works. And as I said, when you've got the subject that can handle that sort of thing, we'll do a lot of variety in the posing.